Well, Andrew and Norine are here, and certainly you guys have made international headlines. What's it like for you now? Do you recognize that you've got a celebrity status?
I'm actually a very private person, so it's uncomfortable at times.
How about you, Andrew?
Well, we've been hiding out at IHOP, International House of Prayer. We're very glad to just be in a prayer
It's not a hiding
worship
place
environment.
anymore. You just announced it. Have you had reverse culture shock coming back into America?
I haven't. I think 2 years in prison, we were so tied to Turkey, and that helped ease my transition back to the States, where I was really glad to come home.
But I miss so many things. There's no question. I miss, what we had, our ministry, our life there.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Andrew, before you were in prison, you got a word from the Lord. Are you ready to come home? Or it's time to come home. What was your first reaction to that?
Yeah, it came out of the blue. It's time to come home. And I thought, well, I am home. And then I began to think, well, maybe, this kept repeating. So I thought, maybe God is telling me it's time to come home to heaven. But Lord, I have so many other things I think you want me to do here. And I had to work through that process. And then when we were arrested, I thought, well, maybe the Lord gave this to me ahead of time so that we would know that He's actually in this, even though it's a shock to us, because the Lord has spoken to us in 2009, said, prepare for harvest. I thought, Lord, you told us to prepare for harvest. Are you cutting that assignment short? And I thought that word, it's time to come home, was for that, to say, yes, I'm in this, don't worry. And then as my detention, my imprisonment dragged on, I said, Lord, you told me it's time to come home. So you have to do this.
So it became something to claim.
Yeah.
So, Lord, you said this.
It
Now
became a
take us home.
promise.
Yes.
Yeah, it became a promise to hold on to.
Yeah.
But you had a real tough time reading through the book. You had a crisis of confidence. You had a crisis of your faith. What happened? Why did you think God had abandoned you?
Well, it's actually complicated, but
Always is.
one thing is that I had different expectations. I had run after God's presence for years, and we had seen Him move so powerfully in our ministry and just on a personal level, encounters. And then I got into prison, and that sense of presence just left. And I was like, where are you, God? And His voice, He was silent. And so this really shocked me. I had an expectation that if I was suffering for Him, I would have a strong sense of presence and of His strength and of joy and of grace. And there was certainly grace, but it was an unfelt grace.
You actually expected that. I mean, you'd read about Wormbrand and others who had been in prison for their faith. And at that point in time, they felt the closest to Him. They had the closest fellowship. But for you, your experience was exact opposite. It was, my God, why have you forsaken me?
It was. And I broke, and I had to come to a point where I began to fight for my faith, saying, whatever you do or don't do, if you don't give me your presence, if you don't speak to me, if you never deliver me from this, I am still going to follow you. So I was really learning to stand in the dark.
Well, I hear you say that, but at the same time you said it the first, I broke. Yeah. What do you mean? The two seem to be in conflict.
Yeah, so when I broke, I lost 50 pounds, I had anxiety attacks, and I was suicidal. I thought I'm going to be in Turkish prison the rest of my life, and I'd much rather be in heaven. I thought I might be losing my sanity and going insane. And I also was afraid that I wasn't wanting to walk away from my faith. I was clinging desperately to my faith. But I thought, can I remain faithful? Can I endure? All these Bible verses that talk about you must endure till the end. I said, I don't know that I can. And so I thought, wouldn't it be better to just go to heaven now and ensure that I don't slip away? So it was a wrong way of thinking. And this changed. I was suicidal over a period of months. I struggled with this. And what changed is I came to a point where I started to fight against these thoughts and say, no, I have an assignment from God, and I have to be faithful to that assignment. And I started to press into this. saying, not with my emotions, but saying, with my will, say, I want to complete the assignment you have for me. Give me the endurance, give me the strength to do it. And so that was from going from despair, of thinking, I just want to end it all, to saying, I'm still in despair, and I'm still afraid I'm going to be in a Turkish prison the rest of my life, but now I'm going to fight to be faithful.
Norine, did you know he was suicidal?
I did. The first period, because we had had over 3 weeks that I couldn't see him when he first went into actual prison. And so at that time, I didn't find out until right after Christmas.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly difficult. There was a period then, a few months later, where it was like a 3 days special fasting time that I had called. And I felt like I was making a list of things to pray for, and I felt like God said, Andrew, live and not die. And I thought, well, that's a little bit dramatic to pray that, but I actually took that to heart. And then when he was suicidal again, then I thought, oh yes, this is exactly what we need to be praying. He will live and not die.
Why did you stay in Turkey? Because if I'd been you and I'd been in prison, it was, roughly 2 weeks, but then you get out and you have the opportunity to leave the country, I think I might have taken.
Can I answer that? Because she loves me.
It's better if it comes from her.
I mean, she fought for me.
Yeah.
But you knew you were at risk.
Yes, and I didn't know how much risk, to be honest. You're kind of making these decisions without a lot of information. And of course, if we were both arrested, that wouldn't help anybody. And there were respected people who were saying you should leave. And so I didn't want to just ignore that. I really wanted to take that seriously. But I said, Lord, if I'm supposed to leave, tell me so clearly, like an angel in front of me or something, not just some, impression. I have to be very sure. Otherwise, I will stay because he needs me.
When it was all unfolding, I actually thought they would try to use you as a pawn.
Who knows?
That they would put you at risk in order to break him and get a confession out of him.
I see.
And the fact that you stayed, I think, that's courageous.
Well, that scenario hadn't occurred to me. But in any case, we didn't know.
Because what was going on, the number of allegations that were completely made up just seemed to be absolutely incredible to me. That you were a spy, that you were trying to incite rebellion against the Turkish government. All of these things were just complete nonsense. And so if they were going to do that, and if they were going to back out of deals and not honor international law, then, okay, what's left for them to do? So anyway, well, what was the confidence that God put into you to make you believe that this is going to be okay?
Well, I wasn't always sure. But when it comes to persecution, there are no guarantees of an outcome, we realized. And so there are no promises that we can hold on. People keep saying, oh, you held on to the promises of God. Well, not promises in the Word, because there are no promises for persecution other than that it will come.
It'll happen.
There's no verse that says Andrew will get out of prison.
Unless God highlights a verse, highlights Peter's release or something like that. So then it becomes, okay, has the Lord said something about this specific situation? And we went back to the words that he had given and, praying that we in fact heard it correctly, or that people who gave these heard correctly. But all you need, a friend said, all you need is one to hold on to. And so I felt that he most likely would get out. I didn't know when. And he would always ask me, and that was always a pressure, do you think it'll be a long time? And so, I don't know, frankly. But the Lord would give grace often in the visits. But it was holding on to the prophetic words, and that's been just huge in our ministry, and it was during this time.
She would say, there are words that haven't been fulfilled. God has a plan for you outside of prison. But how long that will take, it could be 10, 15 years, we don't know.
But when you're in situations like that, it's all being severely tested.
Oh, yeah.
And so then you think, well, did we hear from the Lord?
You're
Are we
definitely
right?
in the olive press, and what's going to come out, and what came out was really good.
But that was a huge help from the Lord, definitely, to stand according to those, to claim them, to pray into them.
What's next for you?
We still want to be involved in missions. I want to see the next generation going into the Muslim world, the next generation of church planters. So we're asking God to give us strategies, relationships, to give us our next assignment.
Okay, well, pray it in. The book is called God's Hostage, a true story of persecution, imprisonment, and perseverance. We've only just scratched the surface. I encourage you to get it. It will encourage your faith. And have you ask the same question. What would you do in a similar circumstance? How would you hold on to God? So it's available wherever books are sold. And thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your courage.